again, welcome to Gardening Time. Today we're down in the heart of rural Gloucestershire at the world famous Westonbirt Arboretum. It's a site of some 600 acres with about 18,000 different plants growing. And some of them are showing magnificent colour today. We're just going to have a wander around with the crowds and enjoy the autumn atmosphere. And with me today to enjoy the colour are my two friends. First of all, Derek, what do you reckon to this?
Very nice here, isn't it? Beautiful colour.
And of course, Jeff, what do you think about this?
Well, I don't know what to think. I've been here once before, but I think this is the best I've ever seen it. I don't know what makes this year so good, but it just seems a fraction better this year.
Well, this is what I was going to say, Derek. Colour is often good if the ground's slightly moist, isn't it? And we get nice cool nights and warm sunny days.
That's it, so that the sugars and starches break down in the chlorophyll, so that pigments start to come through better.
And we say pigments, Derek. Just look at that lovely acer on that side, the orange in it, an unbelievable colour.
When you think of all the different, this is one species of plant, the Acer palmatum, and look at all the different forms of it. It comes from green and it breaks down in reds and oranges and yellows. It's marvellous, isn't it?
What makes this place so good? I mean, could this be done in any garden, or is there something special about this place? That's what I always wonder.
The specialty about this place, it's quite a big place with a lot of plants in it.
Well, I didn't mean that, you know what I mean.
There are, of course, a lot of maples which you can grow in the small garden. Yes, when you think some of these, Jeff, are over 100 years old.
No, but I meant the soil and the conditions,
Well, you've got limestone here, and you've got acid soil overlaying limestone in places, but you can grow these in any garden. You've only got to create the right conditions. A little bit of shelter, like you've got here, a bit of shade.
That's the important thing, the shade. They need dapple shade, don't they? And the big trees have been thinned. And I think the other thing is the size. You were saying these are 100, 120 years old, Derek. Some of them are much smaller, and people have got to be very careful when they choose them. We'll perhaps go down to Plant Centre later and pick out one or two good plants, the size they're going to grow to.
Well, this is it.
You can't buy these big plants, can you, big plants?
No, of course you can't. But you can buy a plant which is suitable. After all, some of these are older than you, Jeff, and that's saying something. The thing is that you can buy a plant which is going to grow probably 6 to 8 feet high in 25 years, which is quite good.
Let's just have a look at some of these colours. There's some lovely yellows in there, Derek.
Yeah, look at that one in there.
Any particular varieties? Or?
Well, of course, it's difficult to say from here, but there's all sorts amongst them. That's supposed to be butterfly there, which is a variegated one, but it's green at present.
Do you mean it'll change? Will it change?
Oh, that'll go to brilliant red and orange in another couple of days, I reckon. It's just starting to turn now.
Well, that's the chlorophyll, isn't it? As it goes out of the leaves, it lets the pigments come through.
That and the sugars and the starches break down and all the pigments come through and give you all this brilliant colour that you've got around.
Why do you think they plant a little one like that in amongst those? Is it because these are going to...
They're the same as you, Dad, that after a few years they start to deteriorate and die, so they've got to have another one coming on.
Well, I think we ought to walk a little bit further and just enjoy some of the fantastic colour here, don't you?
Yeah, marvellous, isn't it? What we've got here, Howard, is Acer palmatum dissectum, a lovely cut-leaf maple, which is different from the ordinary Acer palmatum. The Acer palmatum has got typical 5-fingered leaves. Now, if you look at this, it's very, very neatly cut. Nature cuts it. We don't have to do it with a pair of scissors.
That's the name, dissectum.
That's it,
dissected leaf, isn't it?
Yes. It's a smaller leaf and it's dissected, and it makes a much smaller plant, as you can see by this one.
Well, that was a point I wanted to make, Derek. That is what, 5-7 feet high, I suppose, and about 5 feet across.
Yeah, and it must be 50 years old.
I was going to say 50 years old.
Yeah.
But behind us, we've got the common Japanese maple, Acer palmatum itself.
Same age.
Same age, but a tree perhaps 25 feet high and 15 feet across.
That's a tremendous difference, isn't there?
Well, as a tip, if people have got small gardens, they want a small one, they look for the dissect them. If they want a big one, the plain forms.
Yeah.
Now, what I'm worrying about, and a little bit not sure on Derek, these look similar, but I reckon they could be grown from seed. They look variable.
They are very variable. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plants here, 5 different forms, 5 different foliages, and I think myself they are seedling forms.
Well, the seeds on them now. I've seen seed on them.
I've been collecting them. Now, we must say that people are not allowed to collect them in the Arboretum, but those would be seed that you would collect. Sown out of doors in a sandbed, let the frost get at it?
Yeah, you would. I would sow them, normally I sow them in moist peat and stick them in the fridge for 8 weeks and then sow them outside, and they germinate fairly readily.
But what do they come like? Do they all come exactly the same?
If you put dissectum seed in, Jeff, you'll get all different forms you got here. You'll even get plain Atroperpurium, or even, if it's that red leaf form, or even the common Acer palmatum.
The
come
green
up.
leaves.
Yeah, you get anything come up.
So you've got to grow them and then select them.
Select them. That's what these have been selected out, you see.
Well, let's just make a point and have a look at these, because what worries me is if somebody starts growing them from seed, A, it takes a long while, Derek, and B, they're variable. Is it not better to go to a nurseryman and ask his advice and say, I want a particular cut-leafed one with red foliage or green
Naturally,
foliage?
being a nurseryman, I'm going to say yes, it's the best thing to do.
Well, you could see it. You could say, I'll have that one.
Of course you can.
Yeah.
If you go in the growing season, you'll see all the different forms then. If you go in the autumn now, you see the different colours in the autumn. They've got different habits, different foliages, and absolutely different autumn foliage. So yes, go along and buy a named form.
So it's either have fun and gamble on what you get and take your time from seed, or buy a named grafted form onto a seedling of a named grafted
That's
type.
it.
Now, the other thing I was going to mention here, Derek, we're out in the sun, and just look at the lovely colour on these four.
It's different to that one behind, isn't it?
Because
it's
of
in
the
open.
shade.
Yeah.
And I think the ideal position, if anybody was wanting to plant one of these lovely Japanese maples, is in shade, protection from dry wind.
Out of the wind. Out of the
That's it.
wind.
That's what
And-
causes the edge of the leaf to
And
go in
also
April, May.
in a woodland type soil where they've got plenty of moisture during the growing season, but they're not waterlogged in the winter. They hate waterlogged soil.
They'll die back at the root and
They
they'll die
will.
back on the branch.
One
Yeah.
more thing, the early frosts in April.
Yeah, that can
they
burn.
get them.
They
So
do.
it hasn't got to
Yeah,
be in a
That's
frost
where the
bucket.
shade of,
Yeah.
in this
Of the
case, the
tree come in,
conifer
yeah.
is superb.
Yeah.
And can I just say, they grow this shape quite naturally. You don't do any pruning at
Well,
all.
nothing
no,
at all. You
don't
don't
prune
have to prune them. You don't have to.
Not
They
even
go-
clip them.
Well, I occasionally prune mine at home because they're beginning to outgrow the plants around them. But you can let them grow naturally like this, make super plants without any pruning whatsoever.
No dieback or anything, you don't
No.
prune them, Derek. I think we should just leave them like that and enjoy them.
I do, certainly, I would.
Now, Derek, there's a terrific selection of acers here in the plant centre at Westonbirt. Any hints and tips on what to plant, when?
Well, the first thing I've got to say, Howard, that this is a seedling I've got in my hand, Acer palmatum seedling, which you don't know what it's going to grow into.
Could be any habit, any colour.
Yeah, any form, any colour. It might grow 20 feet, it might only